And now I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Adobe Acrobat, Creating Interactive PDF Forms. I'm going to hand things over to our featured presenter today. He is one of our very own New Horizons instructors, Tom Keene. Tom, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mayan. I am Tom Keene, a Microsoft certified trainer, and I would like to welcome you all for today's session on creating forms using Adobe Acrobat. A little about myself: I have 20 plus years in training. I specialize in teaching Microsoft Office and Adobe applications. And my professional background includes a stint as a sports editor, photographer, and publications manager for a variety of nonprofit organizations. So today we're going to take a look at getting started by creating a form using Adobe Acrobat DC. So in this particular webinar, we're going to prepare a feedback form for the IT department of a fictitious beverage manufacturing company. We're going to start by converting an existing PDF document into an interactive form, and then use the form tools in Acrobat to add various form fields that users can complete online. Once we have the form, we'll then distribute it, track it, and collect and analyze the data, all using tools within Adobe Acrobat. When you get started with Acrobat, you can create interactive PDF forms from documents you've created in other applications, such as Microsoft Word, Adobe InDesign, or scanned in from an existing paper form. So in this process, I'm going to go ahead and take an existing PDF. This would be my feedback form. And this was created in another app, and I've simply made it into a PDF from that app. And now I want to turn those placeholders you see there where form controls should go into actual live form controls. Now, to start that process, first I'm going to change the view here in Adobe Acrobat to about 100%, get a little better look at what I'm doing. And I need to actually start out and use the right set of tools for this. So in this case, I can start by going to my Tools tab in Acrobat. And from my Tools set, I want to go to Prepare Form, and I want to click on that to open that set of tools. This begins the Prepare Form Start page. And on the Start page, I need to select a file, scanner document, or start a form completely from scratch. So from here, I have my single file. I could go to a scanner, or tell it, yes, I would like to actually create a new form and add my individual form controls. I'm going to choose the single file. And in working with this file, if I now had another PDF I wanted to use as the source, I have an opportunity to change it. Right now, I also want to make sure that the auto detection control is on. This way, Adobe Acrobat is going to look for certain shapes and try to automatically replace those shapes with my form controls. So I'm going to click Start, and there's the process. So Adobe has scanned my document and has identified those rectangles that were on the page as now being form controls. So the user here can, of course, check any of these options that are available. In looking at the form and to see how good a job Adobe Acrobat actually did, I notice here at question number 2, did not recognize those circles as being form controls. On page 2 of my form, I'd like to have a spot for the email address. Didn't pick up one. And I'd also like to have a control for other feedback. So now that I've kind of identified the issues, my next step would be to add various controls to my form. And just FYI, when I'm actually inspecting what Adobe has done, I do have this little fields panel open, and this showing me all of the fields on page number 1. And of course, right now with page 2, it's empty because it didn't see any controls there. And in working with this particular panel, it can show me that I have my checkboxes. I have different options. For example, under professionalism, there would be my choices of rating the professionalism scale. So I'm going to begin by going to page number 2. And in page 2, Again, let me zoom in to show you this at a higher magnification. And I then want to start using my form control tools. And from form controls, I can add text. I can choose to add a text field. I could add a checkbox, a radio button. The choice that I really make here really goes back to a couple of things. So first, in my creation process, I need to choose to create it from a document, edit the form if necessary, and then preview to test the form, which is the process we'll be going through. And then in choosing a form field to update a form, I need to determine the type of data a user can enter. So do I want it to be text? Do I want it to be a number? Then I want to determine if respondents need to select an item from a predefined list or enter information on their own. Text boxes, of course, are great for information they have to enter on their own. In other cases, to make form entry a lot easier, I might want to have some predefined drop-down list, checkboxes they can select, or radio buttons. And the key distinction there between a checkbox and a radio button is the number of entries you can select in a group. In a radio button group, you only get to make one entry. With checkboxes, you could select multiple. And then, of course, determine the number of items a user can select from a group of choices. So back in Acrobat right now, I'm going to start with email address. Obviously, I can't provide a drop-down list of those, so that would be a text field. So in my Prepare Form tools, I'm going to select Add a Text Field, and then I want to choose a place to drop it on the page. When I'm dropping something on the page, it's going to help to have some kind of visual guides. So in Acrobat, I want to begin by going to View, go to Show Hide, and then I want to start by going to my rulers and guides. So I can turn on my rulers, and please note for those of you that really enjoy using keyboard shortcuts, I do have one for my rulers, Control R. So now I can see my rulers, horizontal and vertical. Then I also want to go back to View, back to Show Hide, and then tell it I would like to also see a grid. That'll help me kind of just line things up a little neater. So now that I have my grids and guides, I now want to go to my text control, and then I can just move that onto my page. And then I'm just going to line this up on my grid next to question number 5, add email address. So when I've added this label, the first thing I need to do is give this field some kind of name so I can identify what's being populated in it. The name that I give it is strictly for the data that's coming out of it. It's not something the user ever sees. So for my field name, I'm going to replace text number 4 with email address. And then I have the option of making this a required field. I'm going to skip that for right now. And now I want to actually change the size of my field. Email addresses can be very long. So I'm going to place my cursor on the side of the control. And when I see the double head arrow, I'm just going to click and stretch this out. And I'm just going to use my grid line to help me provide a little consistency for it. So that would be a single line text field. For question number 6, any other feedback, often we want to encourage users to provide more than just a single word or phrase. So this is where we want to add a multiple line comment. I'm going to treat this kind of like I would do a tweet. I'm going to limit the number of characters that they can write. I'm not sure I want them to write 4 or 5 pages of comments. So I will then go back to my tools and choose another text box control. Place that again under question number 6, and using my grid to help line it up, I just click to insert. So for the field name, again, I'm just going to type comments, and then I'm going to resize the control. So I'm going to drag it out about the same width as the control above it. And then I want to stretch it down for a few lines. Next, I want to actually set the options for this particular control. So to do that, I can begin by double-clicking on any control, and that will open up the text field properties window. And in this window, I have several tabs. A general tab. This is an option where I can do comments. I could also have a tooltip, so if someone hovers over the control, they'll know what it's for. I can adjust the appearance, its position, setting options for it, actions, formatting, validating controls, and calculating. Now we're going to take a look at several of these commands in just a bit. For right now, I'm interested in the Options tab. And I want to go to my choice and tell it first, this is going to be a multi-line control. And then I want to go to my limit of characters. And I'm going to say 300 characters is the max. Now, I'd also like to make sure people see this box of where they are supposed to type. So for that, I want to choose the Appearance tab. So I'm going to start by choosing a border color, and I'll just choose a black. I have my choice of thickness, so I can do a thin, medium, or thick border. I could also control what font and what font size and text color that's going in the box. To make that box visual for the user, in addition to just having a line around it, I could also choose a fill color. So right now, I'm just going to go ahead and click Close. And I've made my change. My email field, same deal. I want to double click. I will also put my border around that field as well. So again, the user knows the box they're supposed to be typing into. Right now, I'm seeing those because I'm using a feature called highlighting, and it's just highlighting these particular controls. Now, if I actually take a look at my Fields panel, I look at page 2, and I now notice those additional text fields have been added. Now, I'm going to scroll back to page 1 for just a second. Now I want to deal with question number 2. Did the technician show up on time for your appointment? Here there are going to be 2 choices. That means I want to use a set of radio buttons. With radio buttons, I want to create a group and then have options within that group. In this case, I'm going to have 2 options, a yes and a no. So to add the radio button, again, I'm going to go back to my tools and select the radio button. Then I'm just going to move my cursor onto the page, position it over the existing circle, and click to insert. So now I have my radio button choice field. From here, I'm going to change the name for choice and say that's yes. And I want to go ahead and give this group a name. So for my group, I'm going to go ahead and call this one On Time. And for this form control, I want that to make that a required option. Next, I need to draw the second radio button within the group. So instead of going back up to my tools bar on the ribbon, I'm going to choose Add Another Button. So now within that same group, I'm creating the second button. Again, I'm going to align that over the no circle and click. Notice I have the group name already in place. I just need to type in my option name, so I will make this no. And again, in my Fields panel, I now have On Time and the options of yes and no within it. Now, I want to check to see that my radio buttons work. So I want to change my mode of working. Right now, I'm using what's called editing mode for this form. So I'm going to get out of that by clicking the preview option. And then I can actually check yes or no and I see I get to make only one option, so that my checkbox or my radio button is working the way I expect it to. I want to continue working on my form, so I'm now going to click Edit to go back into that mode. And very often when you're working with forms, you may want to provide some kind of button controls for the user. A button might be something to submit a form. It might be another option to clear it. So I want to add an action button next that will reset all of the form controls. So I'm again going to go to my tools and this time choose my button. And then I just choose my place on the page for positioning. So I'll just kind of line that up and then click my insert button. I need to give it a name, so I'm going to type this as reset. And now I want to change some of the properties about the way this button works and program it to do something. So in the field name panel, I'm going to click all properties. So first, I'm going to change the appearance since that tab came up. So I'm going to choose a blue border. I'm going to choose a gray fill color. And then for my line style, I want to use a beveled option to make that button look three-dimensional. Also, when I'm working with the button, I can go to options, and for options, this is where I get my chance to type my label. So I'm going to type in start over. And then I want to choose the action for the button. So for the trigger, this will be a mouse up command. So they have to click on it and release the mouse for it to pop open. And then I wanted to select an action, and this would execute a menu item, which shows up from this default list. So from that list, you see I have a lot of different choices of what a button can do. So I'm going to scroll down and tell it, yes, I'd like to reset a form. And then when I click my add button, these would be all of the fields appearing on the form. And I want to make sure that this would clear all of them instead of just certain controls. So if your form was very complex, maybe it had 3 main sections, you might have 3 reset buttons, and each reset button would only clear certain controls on that particular form. So right now I'm just going to click OK. And now I have my reset button, and I can close my button properties window. At this point, if I distribute the form, I don't really need to see it with my rulers and of course my grid. So I'm done with those now. So I'll just simply go back to my view, show hide, and under my show hide rulers and guides, turn off my grid. And I could use my keyboard shortcut, Control R, to hide my rulers. Now, at this point, what I'd like to do is to go ahead and preview it. So again, I go to preview mode and just check, can I do stuff like, yes, project, yes, they're on time. Can I choose various options in the lists? Yes, I can. And yes, it was exactly right. Could I type an email address? And then notice I have this now black box. I can see where to type. And I could say, sure, instructor at Rudison 062220 dot on Microsoft. And comment, this was a positive experience. Thanks for your help. So always a good idea to run a preview and make sure your controls work the way you expect them to. And then now I'm going to tell it, fine, please start over and clear out everything from the form so it's blank. Test pass, this all is looking good. So now I'd like to just save what I've done. So I can just go ahead and click my save button. And I can choose my destination. So I've got a folder here called lesson number 10 on my desktop for this information. I would say that this would be, my file name would be feedback. I can click save and of course replace the existing form. So that would be my choice of getting this form ready to go. Once I have the form ready, my next step would be to distribute it in some way. And I do have several ways I can actually accomplish that. A very common way of distributing forms, of course, is to use email. If you'd like, you may actually like to use an Adobe Cloud system. If you have an Adobe account, an Adobe ID, you can actually set up a storage facility and use that as a place to distribute your forms. I'm going to do mine locally using my email as a way of distributing my form to everybody. For this demonstration, I'm going to send this form to my email account. I will then submit the email, and then view the responses as the form's data collector. Now first, if I send this form out, I recognize that a lot of people will not actually have Adobe Acrobat on their computers to fill out the data. They're probably going to use Adobe Acrobat Reader. By default, Reader will not be able to save a filled out form. As a user, I of course may want to have my own copy of the form that I've completed just for record keeping. So what I'm going to do next is I want to change this format so I can enable Adobe Reader to save the completed form. So for that, I want to do a File, Save as Other, and then tell it I want to make this a Reader Extended PDF and enable more tools, including Form Fill-In and Save. So there's a little summary of what this allows me to do by using this particular format. So I'm going to click Save Now. And I'm going to just overwrite the existing feedback form. So I will just simply do Save. And then, of course, click Yes to replace it. Now, do you have to do this step? No, but it might be a courtesy for the recipient so that the person can actually save the completed form using Adobe Acrobat Reader. So next, I want to go ahead and distribute the form. To do that, I need to go back and see my form tools. So I could click Edit. That would bring back my form tools. And at the bottom of my forms list, my fields list, I have my ability to distribute my form and to track it. So I want to start by clicking the Distribute button. And this is going to open up my Distribute Form dialog box. And I have my choice of how would I like to distribute it. So I could do it either by email, or I could do it from an internal server, such as, say, SharePoint or some network folder. Right now, I'm going to choose my email option and click Continue. So how would I like to distribute? I can use Adobe Acrobat or use a local copy and manually send it later. I want to do this through Acrobat so I can take advantage of the tracking option. So I'll make sure that's selected and then click Next. On this next method, I do have my delivery method. This is where it manually collects responses to my email inbox. I have the option of sending it to somebody. So I'm going to go ahead and enter my email address. And of course, I could add multiple people's address to that. It also comes with a standard message telling the user, of course, what I'm inviting them to do, instructions, and of course, if they don't have Adobe Acrobat Reader, an option to get it. If you want to change that for some way, of course, you could reset the default message and type whatever you want. Also, I want to make sure I'm collecting the name and email from recipients to provide optimal tracking. So at this point, I'm ready to go. So I just simply do a send. And then it says, of course, in sending the email, send using what app? In this case, I would like to use Microsoft Outlook for that. And just click continue. Now, once I've actually sent out the email, this opens up my tracker window. So in my tracker window, I start with a list of forms. And there would be all the different forms that I have sent out for various kind of tracking options. So right now I see the information, when did I distribute it, where my response file is going to be located. So in this case, it's going back into that same default folder as the form, and my responses are going to be stored in what's called a portfolio. We talk more about portfolio on our Acrobat training, and that's a shameless self-promotion for New Horizons courses. So in this case, I can see my responses, no responses yet, recipients not responded 1, total recipients 1. At this point, I can see who this goes to, and if I would like to send this to a new recipient, I could click the Add Recipient button, and then there's my chance to add someone else to the form. If I need to actually send out this as a reminder to someone, hey, it's been a week, I haven't heard back from you, this is where I can email recipients who haven't responded. And again, using my default email system, and I'm just going to resend them that particular form. Then if I want to email all my recipients, I can just send a message and then tell them in Outlook, here's a person, here's the feedback form, please get this up to date or do something with it. At this point, one of the things I could also do is to view my responses to the form, which again, I don't have any, obviously. And if I'd like to open the original form, I could do that as well. So in Outlook, I can check my email. And there I've actually received my instructions on filling out my particular form. So there's my option. I have been invited to complete it. I can click the attachment to open it in Reader. And if I don't have Reader, there's a link to get it. So I'm going to double click the form. That will open Adobe Acrobat Reader for me. And this is my opportunity to send out the form. In Reader, if I want to know what fields I'm supposed to fill out, notice I have highlight existing fields on. Turn that off, of course, they just look like regular controls. This is also why I drew boxes around these fields so people know where exactly they're supposed to type. So again, I'm just going to change the view, make this a little bit bigger, and then tell it, fine, I had to get an update with my operating system. Did they show up? Yes. Positive experience? Yes, it was all positive. Supporting, it was exactly what I was looking for. I can then type in my email address of who I was. So again, that's an optional field. So right now, since I'm the only one responding, I won't include my email. And there's any other feedback. This is my second time working with you. Both experiences have been extremely positive. Thanks for your help. And now, having completed the form, I'm ready to submit it. So the form will then be going back to the email address, the recipient. There's the full name. And I can click my send button to indicate it's going out. Choosing my app, again, I'm going to use Outlook, and I will continue. And then I can go ahead and close Adobe Acrobat Reader. And notice in closing, I do have the option of wanting to save this because I set that up as part of the original form. So at this point, I'm going to tell it, no, I don't need to save it. And then I can close my email message. Now, in Acrobat, I can take my feedback form, reopen it. And then when I go to my tools, I can go back to prepare form. And again, I can use this document. And then I could actually go back to my tracker and actually see what's going on with this particular form for the start over option. Now, in Outlook, since I was the person collecting the form, there I have my new email message telling me, okay, they have distributed the form. Here's my options to deal with it. I have to double click on the attachment and send it back. So I need to add this to an existing response file, which was already created for me. That's my portfolio. If I'd liked, I could make this a new response file. You might, for example, want to have different responses like once a month. Instead of having everything in one big response file, you might want to break them down into response files for January, February, and so on. I'll use the existing, click OK. And this brings up my welcome to my response file. So from this information, this is my chance to get started with my responses. And then right now I see, of course, I have my one response. I have all of the various fields listed, and I can see the actual responses that they made, including the date and time that I received the form. Now, in collecting this individual form data, a couple things I may want to do with this is, number one, I may want to just filter this to only see certain forms. Let's say right now, one of the things I want to notice would be any form where people actually did fill out a comment. So I do have the option of filtering my forms. So right now I'm going to click the filter. And then I'm going to choose one of the responses. In this case, I'm going to scroll down and tell that I'm interested for comments. And in this case, I have some other options. So I want to tell it that it is not blank. And then, of course, I do see my form because I did add a comment. If I change that to blank, my existing form is filtered out of the list of responses because I did actually have a comment in that field. So then I'm just going to tell it, fine, I want to make this as not blank. And then I can tell it to clear all filters, and I would be able to start the process again and just do done. Once I actually have my form, I may want to use the data somewhere else, maybe analyze it in Excel, or possibly from Acrobat, move it into some kind of database for storage. So what I want to do now is to go to export. And I'm going to tell it to go ahead and export either a single response, or I could tell it to do all responses. And of course, right now there's just the one, so I would get the same results with either option. So I'm going to tell it, fine, export all. Then I can choose a destination where this is going to go. So I will again put mine on my desktop in my Lesson 10 folder. With the name, this is the feedback responses. And I'm going to use this as a CSV file. My other option is to make it as an XML file. Click Save. And now I have actually exported that, and I get a message indicating that this was in fact successfully exported. To look at that, I can just simply go to File Explorer. In File Explorer, I do have my feedback response. I will double click that. That, of course, opens up in Excel. And there I have my feedback, all my fields, all the responses. And I might just expand my comment field to see my data. So this would give you that opportunity to actually then see, summarize, sort, filter in Excel any of the responses you've actually collected using the PDF from the original PDF. One thing I have learned in developing different kinds of forms, if it is humanly possible for somebody to screw up data entry, they will. So one of the things I may want to do in enhancing a form is to add different kinds of validation controls to make sure, for example, people fill out something the way I need it to be filled out. So next, I want to talk to you a little bit about adding validating controls as well as having it do calculations for us. Just like Excel, I can actually, in a PDF, write various formulas and functions to accomplish what I need. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and close the forms that I have open. And in Acrobat, I'm going to open another PDF file. This one I'm going to open called Order Start. So this would be for an online order. They can type in a description of a product. And then I'd like them to enter a price. I'd like them to enter a quantity. And then, of course, I would like to have it automatically tell me what the item total would be. And then for all the products, I would like them to use an order total. So first part of this process is to convert this into a form. So for that, I would go to my Tools group and open up Prepare Form. And it automatically scans that and shows me all my various form fields. So for the price, I have price 0, price 1, price 2, price 3. I have a quantity field, and then I have a total item field. So let's say, for example, in working with part of my data, I want to start with price 0 in here. So again, I'm going to zoom in so I get a closer look. So I'm going to double click on that. And this opens up the text field properties list. So first, I want to handle the way that the data is going in there. So this is where I want to choose the Format tab. Again, I want this field to accept a number. I want to have 2 decimal places. For separator style, I would like to use a comma. And then, of course, for the currency symbol, I would like to use a currency amount. Next, I want to set a validation rule. So I'm going to click the Validate tab. Then tell it value field or field value is in a range. And for my range number, it will be 0, and my max number will be 1,000. So I'm going to click Close. And now I want to test my data validation. For that, I need to switch over to Preview. I'm going to click in the price field. And I'm going to type in 2,000. And then I get the error message telling me that does not follow my validation rules. So it didn't accept and save that value. So now that I know validation works, the next thing I want to do is to add the calculated fields. So again, I need to start by going to Edit mode. Then I'm going to move over into my item total and then double click on the total 0 field. Double clicking, of course, opens the text field's property dialog box. And then here I want to click Calculate. Currently, of course, the field is not calculated. So I want to change that by choosing the value is. And then I need to choose what kind of calculation I want to perform. So I can sum, product, average, max, min. Those of you that are Excel users will recognize many of these choices. So I'm going to tell it this is a product. And now I need to choose the fields that will be used for the calculation. So now I'm going to choose Pick. And then from this list, I'm going to scroll down and tell it I need to start with quantity 0, and price 0. Then I click OK, and that would then give me the number if I multiplied those two together. Since I also want that to show up as a price, this is where I can go to Format. Again, make sure I'm using it as 2, the dollar signs, and now click Close. To test it, I click Preview and tell it fine. I ordered, say, 2. My quantity, I ordered 10. And that would automatically calculate that as $20 for me. Next, of course, I would like to get a grand total underneath. So again, I'm going to just simply go to Edit, and now go to my order total, double click. Go to my Calculate, and of course tell it, yes, this is now a calculated value. Calculation I want is sum. And now what fields do I want to summarize? Well, that is, of course, where I'm going to choose all of my total options. Click OK. And again, just verify my number format. Click Close. So now when I preview it, there, of course, is my grand total. If I change this number to 100, I get up my $200. So that's really nice to be able to include different kinds of calculations as part of a PDF form that can be used. Also, when I'm working with forms, I can include things like form headers and footers. Just if there's a multi-page form, people would have all that data that goes with it. And then at this point, if I'm finished with the form, I obviously would like to add a reset button. So once I test it, I can clear it. And then there would be my option of distributing my form. So that would be getting started by using Adobe Acrobat as a tool for working with forms. I have found in that conversion process, if I'm using Microsoft Word forms and I try to open them in Acrobat, Acrobat doesn't really recognize the modern form controls. I have usually had best luck in Microsoft Word. If I wanted to create something as a form, I would typically go to my legacy controls and use the options such as creating a text box. And I find that Acrobat will recognize that control. It will not recognize what are the modern text field controls. So if I'm building it, the form itself within Microsoft Word, I might use the modern controls if I ultimately did not want to make it a PDF. If I'm going to do a PDF, I would strongly recommend that you go back to your legacy controls and be able to change it from there. So again, that was a look at creating our forms. And now I will turn this to you guys and see, do we have any questions on what we did here about creating our forms?
Thanks so much, Tom. We do have a few questions that did come in. If anyone else has any other questions, please feel free to type those in. Just so everyone knows, New Horizons has been teaching virtual live training since 2001, so that's nearly 20 years. So our facilitators and instructors are trained to teach face-to-face and virtually with given our current environment. So thank you again for joining us here. If you're interested in the material that's presented on this webinar, or if you just have questions regarding what's available to you, please contact your local center for more information. You can log on to newhorizons.com and do a quick zip code search to find the center that's closest to you. Also, our webinar schedule is up to date as well on our website. Just make sure to click on the webinars link to view the full schedule and to register for any upcoming sessions that we may have. And just one more friendly reminder, the recording of today's session will be sent out later today, so you can view, review, or pass it on to anyone who may have missed the session. Now, we got a lot of great questions that came in, Tom. The first one is, why is it when you copy and paste a control, say a checkmark box, and so you can place that same size box in another field on the page, why does it check mark both locations? So if I'm understanding correctly, if you copy and paste the radio button somewhere on page 1 of your form, and then on page 2 you copy paste it so you have that same size and continuity, when those two boxes are checked in both locations.
They would, because when you are copying and pasting them, remember that each form you had to give it a name. So when you're copying and pasting it, they still have the same name. So if you are copying and pasting for the sizing issue, do make sure the minute that you do copy and paste that you double click, and then you want to make sure you go to things like your general and give that an entirely different name. So they could be separate controls with separate names instead of being the same control in 2 different spots. I think that probably would solve that issue.
Great. The next question is, can you format multiple text fields at the same time?
Using field properties, no, I can't change the individual field properties, but if I'm talking about formatting choices, if I have multiple controls selected, open them up, and then say I want to format those and change whatever they're going to be, you probably aren't going to have a lot of luck with that, because Acrobat still wants you to really deal with each of these controls separately. So I know that can be a real problem on some 100 control or field form to be able to do that. But usually Acrobat handles it much better if you would simply do the controls one at a time. So you see right now I've even lose some options for controlling it, positioning, different options. So that might be something that, again, if you're using the properties, you may not be able to control that. You may need to do them individually.
Great. The next question is there a way to add a text box that expands as text is added and moves any subsequent questions down as the box expands, or is that something else or a different type of software?
That would have to probably be a different kind of software. Most of your forms here would be kind of static, and you'd need something that could actually grow and change. I would find you might have better results for something like if you were going to create, say, a web-based type of form. But yeah, I understand most people want dynamic forms where they don't move up and down. That's something that would have to be programmed. So I'm not aware of a way to easily do that within the Acrobat environment.
Great. The next question actually came in a few times in terms of adding recipients and those who would receive the form. Is there a way to add multiple people to receive the form on the back end all at once versus one at a time?
And when you're sending out the form, It might be possible if you had something like, say, a contact group that you maybe set in Outlook, you might be able to identify that particular contact group name. But individually, trying to import a list, I don't think that you could actually tell it, oh, I need to try to import the people that it's going to be receiving it. Your other option is, of course, is you're going to tell it, rather than try to send it out through Acrobat, you might simply want to do that manually and then create the form and then send it out to a distribution list through Outlook.
Great. The next question is, how do you make sure that only one selection is chosen on a multi-choice question? Is there a way that we set that up when we're setting the form up?
One of the options, of course, if you're using some kind of drop-down list of areas, this is where I have a drop-down list versus a list of choices. So on a control, one of the things, of course, if I added that kind of control to my form, so let's say I go back into edit, I want to add a particular control. I drop the box here. I could give it a name, go to my properties. And then this is where I have the options for it, the items. I could do the selection change, it would do nothing with it. And I have some of my options and general properties go with that. So the one thing you'd have to decide is, often do I want to make sure I choose the right control, which is a list of choices, add list from the properties view, or would I like to actually add an individual control? This would have one drop-down list, and then from your properties, you could actually then program this where I believe you could only tell it you get to choose one item from the list. So this is where I could say sort it, check spelling, and allow users to enter custom text, or of course, just simply pick one. So that's the same options here. You need to choose the right kind of list choice, going to your options, and you can choose multiple or single. So that's the option. If you wanted to have a single option just under properties, make sure that the multiple selection is not checked.
Great. The next question is kind of a two-parter. It's in regards to locking a document. The first part is in the Appearance tab, the box that popped up on the bottom left was for locked. The person was asking what that did.
The lock control right now, by turning on the locked option, this simply means that this is in a control and they do not have the option again, if it's locked, to pick it up, move it, change it, and do whatever else they're going to do with it. So it's basically by making sure this thing is locked, closing it, then I could go back and tell it it's unlocked to make any other changes to it. But you notice right now when I'm locking it, it simply means, no, you don't get the option of coming back and changing any of my preset options for this thing. So it's controlling it as a designer. I can just make sure that later, if I password protect this form, you don't have access to it and you do not have the option of changing my preferences.
Great. So the second part of that is, so when a document is locked, obviously that's to make sure that you secure all the design elements. What can someone do who's receiving that document? For example, if they want to use the highlight tool to highlight something in a form, or if they want to copy a sentence from the form, can they still do that given that it is locked?
That would depend upon entirely what security setting that you gave the PDF itself. PDFs, like Word documents, have different security settings. So one of them might be, if I'm getting this document, I might let you print it out, but I will not let you actually copy any of the information in it. I might have one that says, oh, when I'm making a secure PDF, sure, I will allow you to copy and paste text from my PDF. So you would just need to explore the individual PDF security settings. And I know some of those controls are, yes, you can see it on the screen, but you don't get to print it. Yes, you can print it. Yes, you can copy and paste. So simply check the PDF secure options.
Great. The next question is, are you able to set up the form so that the answer from multiple users are tabulated in an Excel sheet or something similar?
The idea is, once you're collecting the individual data, as we saw earlier with the tracker, you could, of course, export everything as a CVS file. And then once it's inside of Excel as a CVS file, then you can do different kinds of counting, sorting, filtering, and other options as well. Notice you did have the filtering options here. So if you wanted to see people who answered or did not answer a particular control, you could set that up and just see that list of data. And then you could highlight, for example, cherry pick which responses in Adobe Tracker that you wanted to make into a CVS file and send that out.
Great. Now this question is related to the tracker that you were talking about. How do you get the tracker window to open if you want to view it later on?
Yep, that would be another option if I have a form and I should be able to just simply view in my tracker is going to the response document. Because remember, the form itself was just originally created, it was distributed, and the responses are coming in. And if I go to my File Explorer and go to my Lesson 10 folder, there I actually have my responses to my feedback. And this is where I can do my Get Started. And then I can actually then see any of those particular responses that I have filled. And then I could go to my tracker and resume tracker and then see who's responded. In the tracker right now, I can then see, yes, look, I did respond. Here's the recipient's name. Here's when they responded. I have now total recipients, 1, number of responses recorded, new. So simply just go to your response file, not the original form file, in order to see the results and reopen the tracker.
Great. A couple more questions here. The next question is there an easy way to clean up how the text fields are laid out in the table? For example, have them line up equally with one another?
Yeah, there's an option where you can do some align and distribute options. So if I'm working with, for example, let me do a file open. Let's say I'm opening up my feedback form. And I wanted to make sure everything was lined up properly. So first thing I want to do, I'll do a quick save as, so I have this under a different name. Feedback 2. With feedback 2 now, if I decide I need to go to my tools, open up prepare form. Yes, start with current one. Sure, save a copy. Feedback 22. And it's got some security setting on it. But anyway, the other option is once you actually have the controls, they have alignment features on them. Let's see if I can open up another document really quickly. So can I do, say, order start? So once I have these controls, this is where you have the ability to, for example, do aligns. So I could select multiple controls, and then I can make sure they're aligned to the top, the middle, the bottom, match this area. So yes, this is where you can do your align, your distribute, and matching sizes for those controls to make sure they do line up properly. I also like to start, as I showed earlier, to use a grid to help me just visually eyeball it, and then just use that to fine tune it after the fact.
Great. We are at the top of the hour, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. As always, Tom, thank you for presenting on behalf of New Horizons. We always enjoy having you on our sessions. With that said, everyone, thank you again. Please stay safe, and hopefully we see you on another session. You may now all log off from the webinar. Thank you again.